a good crowd. Thanks for coming. I won't bore you for more than 5 minutes, I assure you. Well, there's a lot to be getting on with, so no time like the present. Our project is called Living Room. Our team is made up of Aoife McGowan, Kevin FitzGerald, and Andrew Sheppard from Trinity. I'm Moses Rowen. I'm from NCAD. And with that information, we're ready to take a trip into the future. This is our idea. Basically, we want to make a living room, a house that's entirely organic, biological. You can live in it. When you need to, you can change it. You can put more rooms. You can grow it. You can change the color. Not a new idea. It's kind of a utopian idea that was probably first, big in the 50s. But this is our take on it. Basically, we were inspired by yeast, the mechanisms for grafting and the way it grows. So we want to take that for our main structure and then use other synthetic biological things like bioluminescent bacteria for interior lighting, bacteriophages, which allow you to customize your color and completely change the interior house. You can even change the smell, which is probably a good thing in a house made entirely from yeast. And finally, programmed apoptosis. So when you don't need the house anymore, you can basically set the apoptosis and the house will eat itself. So in order to give this that's our idea. We want to give a context. We want to develop a narrative. So we have to go back to the present in order to do that. In our narrative, the living room is a student project which wins the iChem 2013 competition. We called it iChem because we didn't know if we could say iGem or not. That's then taken up by a corporation called GeneUS, who decide to develop it over the next few years and turn it into Ireland's first completely organic bio-village. The bio-village is a big success, and kind of sensing a quick buck, the government decide to use the pods for incredibly cheap council housing. Everything is wonderful, everything's utopian. Sadly, we're going to have to go back to the future to see what happens next. It's not all roses. One of the things that could possibly go wrong is that if you use the wrong cleaning agent on your house, the entire thing could rot into the ground in a few hours. A kind of a darker side that we wanted to develop was some of the possibilities of people actually people like Cahill over here, biohacking it and turning it for their own awful gains. But I'll get off Cahill's back now because I just remember he's one of the judges. So now we have to go into the future. Sorry, I got a little bit carried away. Let's go back to the present for a second. What we'd like to do is, if we won this, we'd like to develop the idea further in the laboratoire. As you saw from a little bit of the narrative, we've actually developed loads of that, and we'd like to go really, really deep with the story as well as with the actual scientific end. Finally, we'd like to construct a full-size living room for Arts Electronica. If you've ever been to any of those big European giant exhibition halls, there's all this amazing stuff and it's vying for your attention. So we want to make something really big. It captures people's imagination. They go in, they say, what is that? You walk over and that's the hook. Once you get that, you can go in and you can kind of develop the narrative and more scientific applications as that goes. So we'd have a full-size living room, we'd have more narrative, and then we'd actually have synthetic biological samples. So we'd like to have actual real bioluminescent bacteria growing there. We'd like to show how bacteriophages can work in order to change the color and completely customize it to the user's needs. And we'd also like to show what can go wrong, possibly, if and when that happens. We estimate that keeping the really expensive thing as opposed to a really nice model is keeping all that bacteria alive. So we're estimating around 12 grand in cost for that. But our goals are to try and really capture people's imaginations, really get them interested in synthetic biology. And then once they're interested, kind of create a multi-layer experience so they get the knowledge to really know how and why and what it is synthetic biologists do and the pros and cons of that. By increasing that knowledge, we can kind of avoid a GM PR situation where just everything seems terrible. So knowledge is power, and that's what we want to try and build upon. Thank you.
Questions? Great presentation. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
I was just wondering, is there any way that you can connect this with people's disillusionment about property and houses of late? And, you know, even the idea of sort of a ghost estate eating itself sounds quite interesting. I mean, have you thought about making those linkages just to make people more receptive to the idea?
Well, very early in the narrative kind of development stage, we were talking about the ghost estate, and we wanted to build on that. And we intend to, and the apoptosis is interesting because it means basically when it's not needed anymore, it'll just disappear. So we would definitely build upon that from the narrative point of view. What we did today was we tried to shy away from it because we wanted to not have like a real kind of agenda on that angle yet, and just kind of take it back to the actual project. But we definitely would. We think that's quite a strong avenue. Thank you.
As I asked out there, what's it going to smell like?
Well, thankfully, originally it'll probably smell like yeast. And when you get sick of that, which will probably take about 5 minutes, you can go out and you can get some bacteriophages and you can customize it and you can make it smell like something that isn't yeast. It's the basic idea. If you want more technical.
Basically, the idea was that, I mean, you can use either retroviruses to integrate their DNA into the bacteria that's already there, or you could use something along the lines of biobricks to actually get a protein that would have a nicer smell than yeast to be produced and released by the bacteria that make up the house. So, I mean, in that way, it's really customizable so that you can actually get it to smell like whatever you want.
Short question, Carl.
You insulted him.
Yeah, I don't know whether to help or hinder.
Sorry, you were right there. It was too easy.
How long does it take to grow a whole house? You can put up a house in a weekend if you really want to, but I mean, how long does it take to grow a whole house?
With enough sugar.
That's a good enough answer on its own.
Yeast grows very quickly, especially in humid conditions. Humid conditions. So we think that it'd actually be more suitable for our kind of high precipitation environment.
Does it keep growing? And I don't mean does it grow with your family, I mean does it grow out of control?
It shouldn't do now, because we were going to put in different forms of apoptosis and things to make it stop program cell like death exactly. It stays where you want it, but we were going to have like a trigger. So say you wanted to extend the house, to like put on a new room, you know, people build extensions if your family grows, you could like target specific areas to grow again and in the form you wanted them.
Like growth factor signaling and keeping cells in their cycles, basically.
Well done.
Thanks a lot.